Welcome, foolish mortals, back to the Villain's Lair. I am so excited to have you here today because I know that I'm going to say something that's going to leave a lot of you pretty shook. And that is that today's villain is not somebody that you're going to like me calling a villain. Today's villain is Elsa. That's right, Elsa from Frozen. And I'm not just saying that because in the original Hans Christian Andersen story, she's based on the Snow Queen, who is guilty of kidnapping, child abuse, child neglect, child endangerment, and brainwashing. So she's, based on a real winner of a character. No, I'm saying it because Elsa herself makes all of the decisions in Disney's Frozen that leave the door open for Hans to do everything that he does. So it's not just that she's based on a villainous character, but even in Disney's more sympathetic adaptation of the character, she's still responsible for the entire destruction of her kingdom and the almost complete annihilation of everything. Doesn't sound super heroic to me. I mean, yeah, she has a great song and a sparkly blue dress, and she's really, really pretty. So typically these are all characteristics of the Disney hero. But if you look at the parallels, Maleficent was based on the evil fairy in Sleeping Beauty. She's a villain in the story, a villain in the Disney movie. The evil queen, villain in the story, villain in the Disney movie. Yet somehow we seem to like to pretend that this is different with Elsa simply because Elsa is more sympathetic. Now, I talked to you a few weeks ago about Evel Endeavor, who I also find to be a very compelling, sympathetic villain, but nobody is under the delusion that she is anything but the villain of that movie. For some reason, people like to overlook that Elsa is, in fact, the villain of her own story. But, Nikki, what about Hans? Hans is the villain of Frozen Mrs. Mouse. Sort of. In a normal Disney format, Hans would normally be the B-villain at best. Look at the feebleness, the weakness of his pathetic plot to take over Arendelle. I mean, even his plan A was not going to work under any stretch of the imagination, and so he fell back on plan B, which, what do you know, that didn't work either, and the only reason it almost did is because of Elsa. And then our B-villain, the Duke of Weselton, would normally not even be considered a C-villain in a normal Disney show. He's more of a, well, really just an annoyance. Hans brings no backup to his situation. His plan A, marry Elsa, have her have an accident, and take over the kingdom. Well, you only have to meet Elsa to realize that's not going to happen. There's no way she's going to trust someone enough to entrust her kingdom and her hand to them in a single day of having the gates open. Anna falls for that because, as Hans mockingly tells her, she's so desperate for approval and attention that she'll accept just about anything and anyone. Elsa does not feel this way. Elsa is more cautious, and so she does not fall into this trap, and she never would have. So plan A, out the window right away for Hans. That's not going to work. So plan B, marry Anna, knock off two sisters, and take over Arendelle. Again, all of these plans were formulated by Hans before he knew about, magical superpowers. That makes the plans more complicated. But either way, two sisters are easier to kill than his 12 brothers or whatever. Two murderers are a little more simple than a dozen. So, I'm not sure if I'm remembering exactly. It seems like it was 12. I remember it was a heckin' ton of brothers. He had a whole bunch of brothers, and they were all in the way of him being what he wanted to be. So, plan B, also pretty feeble plan. Also depends on him coincidentally being able to pull off murder without anybody noticing. And if there's one thing history shows, usually somebody notices, and usually somebody talks about it. So, neither of his plans were particularly well-formed or likely to succeed. However, they were given a lot more strength when the person who was responsible for making decisions for the kingdom and also the person responsible for protecting the kingdom bailed out. Who was that again? Oh yeah, Elsa. Elsa decided she was going to take off because, what was that again? Oh yeah, her sister asked her some hard questions. Y'all, if you are training to be the queen, I feel like part of that preparation needs to include the fact that at some point during that career, somebody's probably going to ask you some hard questions. And usually it's not somebody whose best interests align with yours because they're your sister. Usually it's an enemy. So if she can't take being under fire from her sister, who only has good intentions, how is she going to handle, being interrogated by the leader of a hostile foreign country? She's not. She's not prepared for this. And in that one little moment was enough to completely crack her emotional guard, her oh so cool and collected, you can't marry a man you just met exterior. Not only cracks, it shatters. She sprays ice all over, and then she goes and hides in the woods. By doing this, she, the sole protector of her kingdom, is gone. And she happens to be in a position where she's not only a royal who has the responsibility to take care of her country, she also has the ability to do it. Even if Arendelle didn't have an army, Elsa alone has the power to protect her kingdom and her sister, and chooses to protect neither. She leaves. She hides in the woods. Because her feelings were really hurt that her sister asked her some questions. I'm sorry, you're the queen. You don't get to be a softie with all of these super duper softie feelings. You have to protect people. You have to step up. You have to be responsible. She didn't. It hurt her feelings that her sister asked her mean questions, and she went and hid in the woods. I don't know how many of you have younger siblings. I do. I have 2 of them. And you know what? As soon as they realize that when they open their mouth, sound comes out, they start asking you questions. Like, you're like 4 years older than them. You don't know? You don't know anything? Why are they asking you all these questions? But they do. Non-stop. Incessantly. For as long as you live together. As long as you're part of each other's lives. Now, for me at least, the roles are kind of reversed, and I end up asking my younger siblings a lot of questions too. But for the most part, like that first, I want to say like 12 years, it's constant questions. So if this was enough to make her bail out and leave her country and her sister completely unprotected, I mean, she's not equipped to handle this. I don't know. My brother used to ask me a lot of questions, but I don't think I'd ever abandon him in the ice because I just couldn't take the questions anymore. I might, scoot him out of my room for a little while so I can listen to some music and not answer questions. But I'm not gonna, freeze him. That's crazy. She's crazy. Never was like, well, that was one question too many, kid. I'm gonna go live in the woods and forget about you. It's not how that works, friends. That's not what being a sibling is, older or otherwise. And so the fact that this is her solution, because her sister just asked her too many gosh darn questions, does not make her a hero in my book. It makes her a villain, because her lack of responsibility, her impulsive decisions, and her inability to think about other people over herself, to put others first, is what left her entire kingdom vulnerable to a weak, pathetic plan like the one that Hans had. And he almost pulled it off because the person responsible didn't take responsibility. A lot of you could say, well, she's just a Disney princess. A lot of Disney princesses make irresponsible decisions. Look at Ariel. Well, Ariel was 16. Elsa was like 22 or 23. That's not a child. That's an adult, and she needs to make adult decisions. And presumably, her king and queen mother have been training her to make these decisions because it's never been a mystery who the heir to the throne is. They've known from the beginning Elsa is going to be queen someday, so Elsa had better learn to do some stuff. They taught her none of the stuff, guys. And, so yeah, she pretty much left her whole kingdom open to attack and invasion the very first time she opened the gates. She neglected all of her responsibilities, and not only her responsibilities as queen, but her responsibilities as a sister, left all of those responsibilities behind, and hid in the woods. In the mountains, I guess. But the woods were on the way to the mountains, and the woods were like crazy covered with ice too, so she had at least a little bit of a meltdown there on the way. So, and this is crazy because yes, Anna is an adult technically, but she's 19, so she's an adult barely, and an adult who has had no exposure to any of the outside world whatsoever. So yeah, she's not really an adult. I mean, she kind of is, but she's kind of not, and her sister should have been there to protect her. And everybody talks about how Frozen is all about all of this sisterly love. It's kind of one-sided. Anna steps up and does her part as a sibling. Elsa does not. Elsa is the one who puts Anna in danger in the first place. And so for that, I've made Elsa my villain for the Villain's Lair this week. And I want to know how you feel about it. Do you think because she's a sympathetic, likable character that kind of negates the fact that she's ultimately responsible for everything bad that happens in the entire movie? Or do you think that, as the older sibling and as somebody who has, one would think, gone through training to endure all of this, that maybe she is kind of the villain? An accidental villain, a likable villain, but a villain nonetheless. Let me know what you think, and I'll look forward to talking to you later.